Well, welcome, Bison Catholic, back for another edition of our student testimonials, where we invite a Bison Catholic student, into the studio here and learn a little bit about who they are and what God is doing in their life. So today I have with me Haley. Haley, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe Haley, start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and sort of how did you arrive right here having this interview?
Yeah, so it's kind of it was a little crazy story. Long story short, I'm in OCIA right now. I was not Catholic until about a couple months ago. I was practicing Protestant. And now I'm in OCIA. I'm set to be confirmed at the Easter Vigil at St. Mary's, and I'm really excited.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And as we record this, Lent begins next week.
Yeah.
So this is really kind of the final preparation before your entry into the church.
That's been a very hot topic of conversation just today in general with like all my friends. And I have a friend who's Eastern Orthodox, and so her and I have been talking a little bit, and one of my friends, Kennedy, we have a class together, and we were talking about like what we're going to give up for Lent today. So
yeah, that's awesome. No, so what did that journey look like? Because you were practicing Protestant before, and something must have moved in your heart to say, you know what, I think there's something more. What was that?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a long story, but there was this guy that I was with for a while, and my faith quickly became really important to me when I started coming to college. And then I met him, I started dating him, and he was Catholic. And so for our first date, I actually asked if we could go to Mass because I wanted to understand his faith, and I didn't want any of us to feel the pressure of having to convert to one or another. And so I went, and I thought it was kind of weird at first because I was like, oh, we're standing, we're sitting, we're kneeling, all kind of the classic.
What are all these calisthenics? You know?
Yeah. But I thought it was really interesting. And, the first time I walked into the chapel, I could tell there was something different. And I was like, this is really interesting, and it's really cool. And it all felt so sacred compared to a Protestant church service where, you're jumping along, vibing to music, you sit down, someone talks at you for an hour and then jump and vibe and then go home.
Right,
there's something very different, and it was very quiet and peaceful.
Yeah.
And so I went to a Bison Catholic night after that, and just seeing so many young adults my age there for the same reason was so powerful and beautiful. And a week later I went to adoration for the full I think hour and a half, and I was just there just praying. And at first I was like, I don't know if I can sit here for an hour and a half. That seems like a lot, but I'm gonna try. And I feel like I didn't get any answers through that first time in adoration, but I just felt different walking out of that, and I knew something in my heart changed, and I kind of had this feeling of okay, I need to consider converting.
Yeah, so there's an initial openness of just simply, I don't want to force this other person into my belief. And there's sort of an openness to saying, well, I want to get a little curious about what he believes.
Yeah.
And then that led to an experience.
Yeah, and when him and I were first getting to know each other before we started dating, I very much was like, I'm not going to be Catholic, I'm not going to convert, and here I am today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so clearly that experience was profound to you.
Yeah.
And that it's like many people's experiences. You try to put it into words, and it's like, well, no, there's a movement interior that's hard to describe.
It's a feeling, and it's a very slow yet sudden shift in the mindset. There was one day when I was just sitting in my kitchen praying about it because I just was I felt so conflicted and weird because I was in the middle of two things, and I was a youth group leader at my other church, and I was like, if I start practicing this other faith, I need to step down because it is not right to lead kids in a faith that I am no longer practicing.
Yeah, and then so there's an integrity, kind of a conflict of integrity. I cannot act one way.
Yeah.
And then on the side, over here be doing something very different.
Yeah, and so I was praying about it in my kitchen. I was just so stressed out about it, and I was just I just remember asking God for peace and clarity in the decision, and in my mind I saw Jesus standing behind me, and then he put his hands on my shoulders, and I felt the weight of his hands. And it was like, it is a feeling I have never forgotten because I felt so warm and I felt so at peace and I felt like it was it. That was what I was needing and wanting. It was kind of the final push that I needed. And, you know, I went to adoration a couple days later and like a car alarm went off like 3 times while I was praying. And I was like, I'm not going to question it anymore. I'm just going to go.
Yeah.
Just going to do it.
So the Lord met you in that conflict, right?
Yeah.
Where you were sort of being a tension. There was a terror, if you will, between two ways.
Yeah.
And then he loved you in that and gave you a confirmation or consolation.
Yeah.
That, you know what, I'm leading you somewhere. You can go in peace.
Yeah, it taught me a lot about being obedient to his will and his plan because, you know, becoming a youth group leader at a Protestant church was not easy. It was something that was put on my heart and I prayed for. And there was a bunch of things over the summer before that of choices that I needed to make. And I feel like leading up to deciding to convert, it was him being like, okay, you're going to be obedient to me in this. Okay, a little bit more. And then finally it was like, okay, here's it. Here's your chance.
And did any of those steps along the way, did they ever feel too overwhelming in themselves?
No. It felt like it was supposed to happen. And I knew, something about it, I just knew the Lord wanted it. And it just gave me so much more peace.
Yeah, so he guided you in that peace.
Yeah, I mean, it was nerve-wracking walking in my first day of youth leadership, not knowing any of the kids, like having to speak in front of them and run games with them. But I just got such a huge amount of peace of like, this is where I'm supposed to be right now. This is where the Lord wants me, and he's teaching me something through this.
Yeah. That's amazing. What's been probably your most surprising thing that you have encountered so far about the Catholic faith?
Ooh, that's really hard. There's a lot of things, actually. I think for me, the most surprising thing was that the Eucharist is the full body of Jesus Christ. I didn't fully understand that at first, and I kind of was like, oh, okay. I kind of just said okay, and part of me knew the belief would come along with it. The more I practiced and the more I was just there and with it. At Seek, actually, our big adoration night when they were processing the Eucharist around the space, that was the first time I fully believed that the Eucharist is the body of Jesus. And it was just
surrounded by almost 20,000.
And I love adoration so much, and it's just something I feel like I walk out changed every time. And that night specifically, it was like, this is why I'm here. This is why I do this, because there's peace in this. There's a moral part of it too. It just feels so morally uplifting, and there's a code to follow. And it's just, I just know it's right. I can't explain it. I just know it's right.
So on that point, hey, do you find that the Catholic faith has a clarity to it?
Yeah.
In its moral teaching?
Yeah, I feel so I would go to non-denominational Assemblies of God churches, and I feel like they kind of just swept under the rug of, oh, I have this question. Oh, I have this question. And there was never a clear answer. Whereas in the Catholic faith, there's the catechism, and you could just walk up to anyone in the faith and be like, I have this question, and you're not going to make me feel ashamed for not knowing.
Right.
And something that kind of always bothered me just about faith in general was kind of with these scientific theories of okay, where does evolution theory fit in? Because evolution theory versus creation theory. Because I'm a very fact-based person, and I was reading Trent Horn's book, Why We're Catholic. And he addressed and talked about how the church has recognized those scientific findings, and they haven't, I don't think they've completely denied them, but they haven't accepted them either. And so just knowing that the Catholic faith and the church don't just pretend they don't exist is so comforting.
Right, yeah, the truth is the truth.
Yeah.
No matter in which sort of means that we encounter and discover it.
Yeah.
So, the purview of science is really matter and energy, helping us to understand what is all of this and how does it operate and how does it work. But the truths of our faith actually transcend matter and energy, but they don't contradict matter and energy. So John Paul II, the great hero in so many regards, of the faith in our day and age, wrote a great encyclical called Fides et Ratio, or Faith and Reason, where he outlines exactly how faith and reason so perfectly coexist and complement each other, and in fact are needed because they both have as their object the truth.
Yeah.
That's what both faith and reason are concerned with. It just has to do with truths on a natural order and then truths on a supernatural order,
Yeah.
so above that. And I think the Catholic Church, in her wisdom, has always seen to say, well, if there's a new scientific finding on its merit, we accept that for what we know about that.
Yeah.
And then we're able to sort of move forward in it, saying, well, that's the purview of matter and energy, but it doesn't abolish who God is, or what we say about God, or that he created all of this.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that, you know, people talk about evolution theory and things like that, but I'm like, the chances of Earth existing the exact way it is and being this livable is
Right.
next to impossible. Like, there was obviously some divine intervention.
Absolutely. And there's so many good books out there by people way smarter than I am. So
Yeah.
But there's even one written by a Protestant author, Eric Metaxas. One thing, I think it's called The Atheist Delusion. He's kind of taken a jab at one of the popular atheists that wrote a book called The God Delusion. And he details the accounts of all of these scientific impossibilities. He just uses, astrophysics and biology and even archaeology and all the things that we know. I mean, no one's disputing these facts, and then just showing the impossibility. And the more that's known, the more the argument for God being the creator gets tightened up.
Yeah.
Because it's so amazingly impossible for any of us to be here.
Yeah.
Outside of him willing us into being.
Yeah, and my mom, she was Catholic when she was younger, but she's no longer Catholic. I don't think she believes in God really anymore, more of a greater universe. And this past weekend, she was like, well, how do you know it's real? Like, don't keep your mind open and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Mom, I love you, but there are so many things that I cannot deny. Like, it is so obvious that God is real and God is good and God is working, because I wouldn't have the opportunities that I have without him. And I also told her about the Shroud of Turin, because I think Father Mike talked about it at Seek, and I think she looked into it. So I want to call her and see what she thinks. But
the inquiring mind that's really is open to finding the truth. In some ways, we need not worry about them.
Yeah.
They will find it, and it will lead them right into the church.
Yeah.
So insofar as they're open and willing to accept the truth when they encounter it, we can rest assured that they'll find themselves back, and we can just be that nice prompting witness to them about, well, have you looked into this? Have you looked into that? And the beauty of it that I find is that how coherent each of these different areas is with the others, right? So you bring up the Shroud of Turin, and this is an amazing example of science is then able to sort of squeeze that with all of its technology and instrumentation, and actually start gathering data on, actually, for this thing to be true, it's almost as if scientifically the claim has to be what they say it is. This was actually the shroud Jesus was buried in. Because the science and all the impossibility of some of the metrics around that, it just could not happen any other way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people too, to try and disprove it, is they'll talk a lot about the translations of the Bible and the different books, and it's stuff written from so many years ago. How do we know it's true and current? And I'm like, well, one, that's why faith exists, and two, I think there's two different books that talk about Jesus's robes. One of them, I think, said it was maroon, and one of them said it was purple. And I was like, it's clear that this isn't fake, because even though they're two different colors, there's still validity to it, and being like, I don't remember exactly how this happened, but it happened. It's two different accounts of the same thing.
In college, getting a lot of grief because we were going over some microbial stains. And I called it pinkish purple, and someone corrected me and said, that's fuchsia.
Yeah.
Who was right? right? And,
Yeah.
And I chuckle at that a little bit because I'm like, it was kind of a silly thing at the time where we're like, yeah, he's just a colorblind boy. He only has 8 colors in his box of crayons. And
Yeah.
I didn't know what fuchsia was. I'm like, what? But I mean, right there, I demonstrated hopefully that actually there's a very reasonable way.
Yeah.
That someone say that's maroon and that one. What was the other color?
It was like purple or something.
All right, that seems pretty close to me, but we'll split the difference maybe.
Yeah. I just think it's so interesting that people are trying to deny it when there are obviously multiple like literal firsthand accounts of Jesus and his like ministry.
Yeah, and it brings up a bigger point maybe that I find far weightier when we look at who Jesus is and this faith that we profess. And it's what you sort of mentioned at the very beginning of our conversation, where God was leading you, and he gave you such an overwhelming sense of peace and assurance, and that even as you looked more into it, your reason, it sort of lined right up with that. There was nothing that was like, oh, I'm feeling this great sense of peace, but it doesn't really make sense. Actually, the more that you discover, you're like, it actually seems to make more and more sense.
Yeah.
Right? And I think this is really what God does for each one of us, and to any of those who are journeying along the way and asking the questions, is this true? Should I follow this? Should I enter the Catholic Church? I think it really comes down to that God will be present with you in that journey. The faith that we profess is not an abstract concept.
Yeah.
It's not like just some idea that we're arguing out. It's actually a relationship with not just a person, but a trinity of persons, God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And because it's a real relationship, there's real interaction going on that we can be known and loved by him in a real way in our present life.
Yeah. My favorite thing to say is it's not a monologue, it's a dialogue.
Yeah.
It's not just you making choices and hoping Jesus like has your back with it. It's you having to reach out to him and ask him and be like, is this what I do? Like, and sometimes you have to act on that and he'll open the doors where they need to be opened.
Yeah, that's part of having faith and hope in our life is at some point, okay, I'm going to be a little bold here. And I'm going to step out even when I don't know the outcome or I don't know with 100% certainty in my reason. I'm going to step out in faith.
Yeah.
And Lord, I know you're going to meet me right in that gap.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so important, even for us to be having this conversation, for you being able to share your testimony with anyone who's watching or listening. And it reminds me of the passage out of the book of Revelation where St. John writes in this grand vision of heaven that the martyrs, those who are in heaven, they overcame by 2 things, by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. That there's a real power in us being able to share these things with one another, that yes, Christ and his sacrifice on the cross, that's the source of the power. But then what we get to do in receiving this is we get to live out our life, and it's almost as if the power of God gets to come back through us. His kingdom becomes manifest through us in a way that gives its own power in its own right. Yeah. By the way that Haley lives her life or Nathan lives his life, right? That our testimony manifests that power in a lot, and it comes through our life lived well in faith, hope, and charity.
Yeah. I don't remember if this was at Secret OCA, but someone said that there is only one of you, and God gave you such a specific mission that no one else will ever be able to carry that out.
Yeah.
Like, God put you, like, we didn't have to exist. I didn't have to exist. Right. But God loved me so much, and he wanted me to exist, and he wanted me to carry out this very specific part of the plan that to me might seem dumb and small, but to him it's like the biggest deal ever.
Yeah. And why do you think so many people have a hard time accepting that? Because what you said is absolutely true. But we live in a world that acts as if that's the most absurd claim ever. Why do you think that is?
I think it might be because a lot of people want to choose what they want over what God wants. I am kind of targeting towards people that might not know who God is or might just sit and deny it. But at the end of the day, like, humans just crave to be loved and want to be loved. And I'm not talking about human loving another human. I'm talking about like God the Father love.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't know that and they don't understand that.
Yeah.
And so they have to accept that first, and then that'll help them understand, like, I'm supposed to carry out this thing. I'm like a super spy. I have this specific mission that I need to do before I can go home to heaven. And it's hard to accept sometimes because there's things where I'm like, oh, I want to do that, or oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
You know, but then at the end of the day, I have to remind myself, like, those are just my earthly desires. And like, yeah, that seems so cool. And if God has that in my life, then cool.
Mm-hmm.
But also I have to be okay with not getting that, because his mission is what matters at the end of the day, and what he wants is what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think, and I think you're right. And I think people have a hard time accepting love. There's a deep suspicion of love because a lot of people have been wounded by so many different things.
Yeah.
And when you become wounded, you, in some ways, you do become a little bit suspicious.
Yeah.
And the ultimate wound, of course, is sin, right? The fact that sin is in the world and it keeps circulating around, and you know what? I'm a sinner. Everyone's a sinner. We all fall short of the glory of God. Our need of His mercy and His grace. You know, Adam and Eve, when they sinned, what did they do? Well, they hid themselves. They saw that they were naked when previously that wasn't a problem. There's no shame attached with that. And so then they hid from one another and with God. But what did God do? And this is really important. God did not leave them in their shame, and He did not leave them hidden. He sought them out. And even His voice, "Where are you?" drew Adam out. And He says, well, we're hiding because we ate of the fruit of the tree and we saw that we were naked. And what did God do? He didn't sort of condemn them outright. He actually clothed them. Mm-hmm. But He also couldn't let them stay in the garden, because no longer were they in a condition where I think they could have handled, right, the sort of the eternity of the place, if you will, you know, the fruit of the tree of life. And that might be a good definition of hell, actually, is living endlessly in a state of sin, right? So, now you have knowledge of evil, and now you have life for all eternity. That's probably closer to what I think hell would look like.
Yeah.
And so God, in His mercy, I think, says, no, I can't have you stay here. This isn't the end of the story, though. Don't worry. There's more to come.
Yeah.
And so I think just trusting in the fact that God seeks us out, even when we're suspicious, even when we're hiding.
Yeah. My brother, I mean, I tell people this all the time, but my brother's had a lot of trouble. He's about to graduate high school this summer, which I'm so thankful for, because he's had a lot of trouble socially, academically, things like that. And he never fully had a relationship with God. And I mean, I don't think he's actively working on it today, but when I got home from Seek, I brought him to an adoration chapel, and I literally told him, I was like, go in there and ask for help.
Yeah.
It's just the asking that'll change your life.
And what was his experience with that?
He cried. He almost cried. Like, he came out and he was shaking, and I could tell it changed him. The next day after school, he stopped at the adoration chapel first before he went home. Yeah. And he's not actively practicing right now, but as far as I know, he's still praying. And him and my mom recently went to Italy, and they went to Rome and the Vatican City, and he went behind the curtain for adoration. He told my mom, he was like, I'm going to go do this quick. And he went in there and prayed. And I can tell there's something different too, because even a couple days after I had brought him to an adoration chapel for the first time, he had applied to college. Which has been such a huge thing, because he is definitely a video gamer, and my entire family has been this, he doesn't have a plan for a future. It's like he doesn't have hope. Yeah. And for him to apply to college was so monumental in all of our lives.
It's that there's a future.
Yeah.
I have a future. And that really is one of these, almost a definition of hope, is that I look with eager expectation to what is yet to come. That's so incredible, because one, you have the confidence in your invitation. You should just go in there an hour, for a bit, and just see what happens. And then, of course, it happens. He's moved. And And I think you're exactly right. He's on the way,
Yeah.
right? And these are signal graces that the Lord leads us with into deeper conversion. And every one of us has a journey and a step and a path. And I reflect on my own journey. And if someone would have said, well, you're not all the way there yet, sorry, you got to get out. Well, I wouldn't be sitting here today. And if someone even said that to me now, I'm kind of like, well, yeah, I'm in the church, you know, I'm living the life that the church asked me to live. But am I a saint yet? No, not yet. I'm working on it. I'm hoping with God's grace maybe someday to be with him in heaven. But I'm really glad that no one has said, well, sorry, you had your chance.
Yeah.
Right? That we always get to begin anew, and there's always more yet to come, and that people have been patient even with me along the way, and you're doing that for your brother.
Yeah, it's really cool because sometimes when I'm home, he'll go to mass with me, and I know he's not going on his own yet, but I'm just so proud of him, and I don't think I've ever felt this proud of him before, because he is just, God is literally changing his life, and I am watching it happen, and like, you know, like everyone always says, like God moves on the smallest seed of faith, and like him having like the smallest seed and it slowly growing and like germinating right now, it's so cool.
Yeah. It's there. It's present, though. You know, the faith the size of a mustard seed, right? It's not really a quantitative thing in that sense. Well, it's this percentage. It's that it's present. And so the faith that he has it's a real faith.
Yeah.
Right? It's there, and God will only continue to grow that, like you said. I'm deeply grateful for you know, just even hearing about your accompaniment and your wisdom and just your encouragement towards your family. Family's often the hardest to reach. No doubt about it.
It really is. I was nervous to tell my family that I was converting. My dad's kind of indifferent on it. Like he's the one who made sure I got baptized when I was a baby. He's Methodist, I think, and so like he doesn't go to church, he doesn't pray much, you know, but like every time he talks about God, he like gets goosebumps and his hair stands up, and so he believes, and so he was a little indifferent about it. He was like, whatever makes you happy, like as long as you're following God, I'm proud of you. My mom was kind of, you know, keep your mind open, but I was so nervous to tell both my grandmas, and it was so overwhelming how much they were like, you are making the best decision in your faith and you're following God, and that's all that matters. And so I think all of them bearing witness to what I'm doing and going through right now is like opening their hearts and their minds.
Yeah, and I have real confidence that the more you just simply live out this life in the church, the more they're going to see the fruit of that.
Yeah.
And the more the fruit of that is going to draw themselves closer to God.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the great witness that we get to be so privileged to give. And in some ways, it's like the pressure's off.
Yeah.
Just be faithful yourself.
Yeah.
And then find those opportunities as you encounter people.
Yeah.
And watch what God does. Right?
Yeah.
The initiative, like we get to co-labor, but the principal labor is his.
Yeah. I think in every single conversation I have with my family about my faith, it is not me talking, it is the Holy Spirit talking. I'm just a vessel. I'm just there. Yeah.
Praise God. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you brought up Seek a few times. You know, we're hearing more about students' testimonies of Seek. Is there anything else that happened at that conference this past year that just stands out in your mind as something so amazing and great?
There's so much. I would not be able to tell you everything, but
maybe we'll have you back. We'll do an episode part 2 of that.
Yeah, part 2. I mean, there were so many lessons that I just learned by being there, but I think the most important thing I learned was during our big time of adoration. I was upset for a lot of my time there because they were pushing go to confession, go to confession, go to confession. I cannot receive any of the sacraments yet. But confession is 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
Yay.
So close.
Yeah, but I just kind of felt this dread and this weight on my shoulders because I was like, I am a sinner. I have sinned a lot in my life. And I just felt like I was carrying the sin around. And actually I was talking to my friend Caitlin, and she kind of was like, do you really think God wouldn't forgive you if you died tomorrow and didn't go to confession? And I was like, I think he'd forgive me, you know, like I don't, you know, and she was like, exactly. So don't hold it over yourself until you can go.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And, you know, but at Seek, I was still upset and I was frustrated because, like, also, too, like, I wanted to take communion so bad. And, like, it
like
just.
this growing desire for that sacramental union.
Yeah, it was this overwhelming desire. And it still is this overwhelming desire. And during adoration, there was a couple priests up at the front. And I went up and talked to one of them. And, like, I was, like, sobbing. Like, I couldn't get a word out. And I was just, like, I was like, I'm just so frustrated. And I'm so tired. And I just want to take part in this so bad. And he kind of just looked at me and he said, you're a big inspiration. And I was like, me? Like, why? And he kind of just said, like, your desire to partake in the sacraments is so powerful and so strong. And he literally looked at me and said, there are some people who walk up and receive the Eucharist like it's a cookie, and I hate that. But, like, share your desire with people because it'll change them and how they approach the sacraments.
He's exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, the pews are filled across the country and world with people who are, unfortunately, you know, only half there. Checked out. And I don't say that in, like, a condemning way to anybody. Obviously, we're, like I said before, we're all on a journey. I mean, praise God that they're there. But to be awakened to that deeper desire, right? To sort of get snapped out of this lulled slumber that so many people, especially in the West, are in. I think it's just our level of comfort and ease towards life. We're just going from one thing to the next, one comfort, one pleasure to the next. And it's sedated people. Like, you're not even, it's kind of like, are you awake? So keep giving that witness to the deep desire of what the reality behind this is. Yeah,
and I think about that conversation, I think every day. And I was reflecting on it on the bus ride back to Fargo. And I kind of was just realizing that through this, God is teaching me to be thankful for every time I will be able to receive the Eucharist, every time I can go to confession, every time I can even bear witness to a sacrament. And just to be thankful for that, because I feel like if it was just an easy, like, oh, I'm Catholic now, like, I can receive communion, I can go to confession, just by saying that, I would not have had gained an understanding, and I would not have gained a gratefulness.
Well, and remember it, too. Almost make a memorial in your mind and your heart about this for the times when it becomes difficult, right? Because this is a great gift that you're given right now, this really great fervor, this deep, deep desire. That's an incredible gift. And you'll need to draw on that down the line. That's if life has taught me anything, it's that there are going to be, you know, difficult stretches and things that we'll have to endure and suffer. And the beauty is God's deepening and loving presence as we experience those trials and tribulations and sorrows of life. It's actually an invitation to a deeper intimacy. And in a few weeks, I'll get to join you guys at our OCIA.
I'm so excited.
We're going to talk about redemptive suffering. So more to come on that. This notion of our suffering as an occasion to love and be loved by God.
I kind of feel like right now I'm kind of going through one of those, like, seasons of struggle a little bit, you know, because I'm not going to deny, like, there are spiritual attacks left and right the closer Easter comes, you know.
Because the devil doesn't want you to do that. And again, I don't want to, like, give him too much credit. But I can say with a certain accuracy, he does not want anybody coming to faith or entering the church, because the explosion of grace that's going to happen. So don't let him discourage you.
And I'm not. And, like, sometimes, like, I have to drag myself to Mass because I'm like, I'm tired. I, like, whatever. And but then I, like, also remind myself, and I'm like, I want to be there. I want to take part in this. I cannot imagine my life without this. And so that kind of usually gets me, like, okay, I'll go, you know?
And that's it, right? We have to go back and reach into our memory of the things that we know. That is where I saw the hand of God. In the Old Testament, when God would show up, oftentimes what they would do is build an altar and make a sacrifice there. And then they would name the place based upon that. You know, basically remember what the Lord did in this spot. and I think it's a good practice even in our hearts to, in a way, almost build an altar to the way that God manifested and showed up for us in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because we will have to draw from that later in life.
Yeah.
And as we journey on towards the next great thing that he's going to invite us into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to Michigan this summer for an
Mhm.
internship. I don't know anyone there.
Mhm.
There's only one Catholic church there. And I feel like the season that I'm in right now is preparing me for that season.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm not going to have anyone there to hold me accountable except for myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's all going to be on me to
Mhm.
make sure I do this. I go to confession at least once a month. I show up for Mass every Sunday
Mhm.
or Saturday night.
Yeah. 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 Well, be surprised. Be ready to be surprised
Yeah.
about who God has in store for you to help you along the way. On that
Yeah.
too. And I, as an assurance too, we're the world we live in. There's a lot of pitfalls to technology, right?
Mhm.
But the connectedness that it allows us to have is one of its advantages.
Yeah.
So summer accountability. This is something not foreign to college ministry. Summer looks very different than the other
Mhm.
9 months of the year,
Yeah.
and so you won't be alone there. We'll
Mhm.
try to give you guys some different modes of connection and accountability. And hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
How's prayer going? Are you getting to Mass? There's ways to do that.
Yeah.
Zoom, for all of its other things, could possibly help bring us all together for even those quick check-ins
Yeah.
across the summer.
Yeah. I feel like being a college kid and being at college, God so quickly becomes a part of your routine. And the people you talk to and you hang out with every day and showing up to the Newman Center for Mass every Sunday, like I feel like it becomes ingrained in your routine that when you are taken out of your routine, it becomes a much bigger fight.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
I don't want to call it a fight, but that's what it is.
Oh, it is. It's a battle. And there's a reason why habits are so important.
Yeah.
It's kind of a topic that I'm deeply passionate about now, is the formation of good habits and the
Mhm.
breaking of bad habits. Our whole life gets lived better when we have those well-designed, well-cultivated habits.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't have to exert extraordinary effort at every turn. There's no way we can sustain that,
Yeah.
right? So what we want to do is actually design a way of life, an environment that habitually makes it very easy for us to do the right thing in the right way with the greatest enjoyment. I want to build my life around that. I don't want to just wait for life to happen to me.
Yeah.
No. We're going to be proactive. We're going to get ahead of this thing and actually design it in such a way that we're not at the mercy of it.
Yeah.
Right? That we're cultivating the skills and the habits and the virtues, and that's all virtue really is a habitual, joyful inclination to the good.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to see what God has for me this summer, because I know putting me in the middle of Petoskey, Michigan with a job is not coincidence.
I don't even know where that's at. So
It's-
sorry for anyone who's watching or listening from Petoskey, Michigan.
I'm
So-
pretty sure I'm not even pronouncing it right, but it's like right below, you have to come down through the UP to get there. It's on the north or side.
if it's a glove,
Yeah.
it's at the tip of the glove kind of.
Well, you come back down through the UP and then you go by the lake a little bit and then it's right there. But I'm actually running a half marathon a week
Really?
into it
Nice.
around the lake, so I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, good. I always know this: whatever God has in store for you, it will be good.
Yeah.
So, with great hope and eager expectation, look forward to it.
Yeah. I think there's definitely some nerves going,
Mhm.
but I just keep reminding myself, I'm just telling myself, look for God, look for
Yeah,
God, look for God.
Yeah. Well, Haley, thanks for being
Yeah.
with us and telling your amazing and powerful testimony and how well Seek impacted you. And any last words that you want to share with anybody who's watching or listening?
If there's anyone out there listening that is considering converting or anything, look into it first, but pray about it, because prayer is your most powerful tool that you can use, and I promise God will respond and he will show you. And that is all I have to say.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, well, Haley, we'll have to do this again because I
Yeah.
think there is a lot more to your story.
There's a lot.
And,
Yeah.
And we would love to hear it. I know those who are part of this community or your peers as fellow students certainly want to hear about it. And then I know there's a lot of benefactors and supporters of the Newman Center and people praying for all of you and for the mission of this place that certainly want to hear about it and will be encouraged by it, because there's some really very faithful, stalwart people who have lived through a lot of upheaval in the church, and you bring them a lot of hope
Yeah.
by what you're allowing God to do in and through your life. So thank you for that, and I
Yeah.
look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah.
I just want to thank anybody who has been listening or watching to this, and we hope to bring you more content like this where we can connect you with the student testimonies and the good work God is doing in and through the lives of the students at Bison Catholic. So thank you for being with us today, and God bless all of you.